I'm going to say something that might sting before it sets you free. So lean in, and don't blink. Closure is not something a man gives you. It's something you stop begging for. And the moment you stop needing it, respect rushes in like oxygen after you've been holding your breath for years. Because here's the secret nobody warned you about when you were taught to be emotionally mature and communicate your feelings. Needing answers keeps you energetically beneath the person who withheld them. And I learned this the hard way the night I realized I was dressed perfectly. Lip gloss fresh, phone face down on a marble bar, waiting for a message that never came. Telling myself I just needed one conversation, one explanation, one apology so I could finally move on. And in that moment, I wasn't powerful. I wasn't feminine. I wasn't magnetic. I was outsourced, emotionally subcontracted to someone who had already exited the building. And the philosophy that snapped me awake was brutal but elegant. Marcus Aurelius whispered it centuries ago when he said you always own the power to revoke your consent to suffering. And yet modern dating trains women to prolong pain in the name of closure, as if clarity must arrive through someone else's mouth to be valid. But psychologically, the person who asks for closure is admitting dependence, and the person who withholds it unconsciously registers superiority. Not because he's evil, but because power dynamics are ancient and automatic. And once you see that, once you feel it click in your chest, you stop asking, why did he do this to me? And you start asking, why did I give him the authority to define my ending? And that question alone begins to rewrite the story. Because not needing closure doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you cared so deeply about yourself that you refused to kneel for crumbs of understanding from someone who couldn't meet you at eye level. And this is where respect is born, not from speeches or long texts or perfectly articulated feelings, but from silence that is self-chosen. Silence that says, I am complete without your commentary. And I know some of you are feeling the panic rise right now. Thinking, but what if he thinks I didn't care? What if he misunderstands me? What if I look cold? And sweetheart, that fear is the last chain. Because the woman who doesn't rush to correct perceptions becomes unforgettable. She becomes a question mark. And the human brain hates unresolved mysteries more than it hates rejection. So when you stop needing closure, you don't disappear. You linger, not because you chased, but because you left space. And space is where obsession quietly grows. Let me take you deeper. Because this isn't about playing games or pretending you're healed when you're not. It's about emotional sovereignty, the psychological shift from reactive to self-directed. And every high-status woman I know, the kind who walks into rooms like she owns the air, learned this lesson after one relationship where she over-explained herself into exhaustion, where she sent the final paragraph text hoping clarity would soften the ending, only to feel smaller afterward, not bigger. And that's because explanation is often a disguised plea for validation. And the moment you stop explaining, you reclaim authority over your narrative. Nietzsche said maturity is learning to stand alone with your truth. And in dating, that looks like deciding that your experience is enough evidence. That confusion itself is an answer. And that someone who wanted to treat you well would never leave you guessing about your worth. So instead of chasing closure, you practice what I call internal closure, where you sit with yourself and you ask not what did he mean, but what did I feel? What boundary was crossed? What standard was revealed? And suddenly the fog lifts, because closure was never missing. It was outsourced. And the respect that follows this shift is subtle but seismic. He may never tell you what happened, but he will feel the absence of your emotional labor, the lack of follow-up, the missing availability. And paradoxically, that's when messages arrive. Not because you waited, but because you detached. Because the nervous system reads independence as value. And value commands attention. And even if he never comes back, something far more important happens. You stop needing him too. And that's where your power calcifies into something unshakable. Because women who don't chase emotional resolution become women who are chased for emotional presence. And I want you to notice how different that feels in your body. The relief of no longer performing grief for an audience of one. The quiet luxury of not announcing your healing, just living it. And yes, This is the moment I remind you. If this is landing, if your chest feels tight and calm at the same time, subscribe, turn on notifications, because we don't do surface-level dating advice here. We build women who cannot be destabilized by ambiguity. And I want you growing with us, not just watching. Here's the final truth I want to leave humming in your bones. Not needing closure is not bitterness. It's elegance. It's the emotional equivalent of walking away without slamming the door, knowing the echo will be louder than any speech you could have given. And the women who master this don't become cold. They become selective. They don't harden. They refine. They understand that respect is not negotiated. It's observed. And when you stop needing someone to validate your pain, you become the kind of woman whose absence educates, whose boundaries speak fluently without subtitles, and whose life moves forward so decisively that the past loses its grip. And one day, maybe weeks, maybe months, you'll realize you haven't thought about the conversation you never had, because you no longer need it. Your nervous system has recalibrated, your standards have upgraded, and the respect you once begged for externally is now the baseline you enforce internally. And that is magnetic, not just to men, but to opportunities, to peace, to the version of yourself who sleeps better and stands taller. So if there's one thing you comment today, let it be this. Tell me the moment you realized you don't need closure to move on. Because when women share that awakening, other women wake up faster. And that's how this becomes more than a video. It becomes a quiet revolution, one woman at a time, choosing dignity over explanation, power over permission, and respect over reassurance. And once you taste that, you never go back.